there, and we've already gone through what you said to the press and what was said earlier back during that time period about your daughter. We already went through all that. Is that right? But as you sit here today, you don't believe she had anything to do with it.
I've never thought that she was. Okay. From today back to when you filed the frivolous lawsuit to when she went in front of the news
once again,
or whatever.
The good news is, Miss Anthony, we're almost done, and I promise you that. So if you want to talk to the press again and say all these things, that's fine. But I'm going to ask my questions, and we're going to wrap this thing up. Okay? So there came a point in time, though, that when Casey came home, that she changed the version of events that you understood about Sawgrass Apartments.
I'm done. I've already answered the question. She's not the one. I'm done.
Okay.
Let me just say this for the record. Hold on, Brad. Let me say this.
Listen, I'm tired of getting beat up. He asked me a question, and he won't let me finish it. He's just like everybody else. They want to cut you off
Cindy,
when they don't want to hear the answer.
Brad, if she's going to walk out, we're going to move to find her in contempt of court. We're going to be seeking sanctions, attorney's fees.
Ask me the last question.
Ma'am, we're
not walking out, Mr. Morgan.
Ask me the last question. I'm sitting in the seat.
That's not the last question. We need to mic up.
I don't need to mic anything.
Ma'am?
I never agreed to have a mic on.
Okay. Ma'am?
I'm not micing up.
Well, then.
Someone touches me, I'm going to file harassment charges if someone's touching me.
Brad.
I'm not micing up. I'll talk loud enough that your fucking camera's
Brad,
there.
Brad.
Can we take a break?
Sure.
Sure. Let's go out again. Time is 3:53. We'll go off record. Time is 3:59. We are back on record.
Cindy, there came a time where your private investigator, Dominic Casey, summoned one of your security people, Mr. Hoover, to his office at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning about a month before the body was found. When did you become aware of that meeting?
In Mr. Conway's office. What day did we go into your office? The 17th? No, the 13th or something.
Of what month?
December.
Roughly. Okay.
It was after it was the day that we got fingerprinted in Brad's office.
And Mr. Casey was with you then?
Yes, and Mr. Hoover.
And that's the first time they told you that they had gone into the woods.
Yeah, Mr. Hoover's the one that told me.
And they told you that they'd gone into the woods based on a tip.
Yes.
That had been received by Mr. Casey.
Correct.
Did Mr. Casey tell you who gave him that tip?
Yes.
And who did he say gave him that tip?
I'm not sure what Jeanette's last name. I think it's Lucas.
And who is Jeanette Lucas?
She's a psychic or medium or whatever she is. She has some kind of ability that she sees things in visions or whatever. I'm not sure how it works.
And he told you that day in Brad's office?
They told me about the time that they went out there, yes, in Brad's office.
And did they actually tell you they'd been out there 3 times?
I didn't.
Morgan, if you could just clarify, you keep saying they, inferring...
Dominic Casey and Mr. Hoover.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I really didn't realize he was out there 3 times until I heard it all on the news.
But the whole time he had worked for you, up until the day at Brad's office, they had never told you about this tip or about going out on any day.
Correct.
And when you finally learned about it that day in Brad's office, what did he tell you?
Mr. Hoover is the one, I believe.
Mr. Hoover
is the one, I believe, brought it up and said something. I can't recall that day. I can't recall exactly what was said. That was a very emotional day.
Of course.
Because it was 2 days after we found out that it could possibly be Kaylee. And it was the first day I was actually able to go back into my home after we had been away and found the house ransacked just before we got there. So it was very emotional. I can't remember exactly what the words were, but I know they talked. James told me about a snake that he had seen, and
James being
Hoover, Mr. Hoover.
Did Mr. Hoover tell you that day?
And Mr. Hoover was never employed by us.
He was like a volunteer security.
He volunteered. I thought he was a stalker at first.
Did Mr. Hoover tell you where the tip came from?
No, Mr. Hoover never did.
But Mr. Casey told you.
Correct.
Did Mr. Hoover hear Mr. Casey tell you that?
You know, I can't remember.
Did whoever's telling you about the medium, did they tell you what the medium had said to Mr. Casey?
No.
Did you ever hear or understand that the medium or psychic, in conversation with Mr. Casey, told Mr. Casey the approximate area where she believed the body was located?
I found that out, watching the news.
Okay. And did you also find out watching the news that the medium had said when you walk into the woods here, there will be pavers?
I remember the pavers.
Now, you all have pavers at your home, correct?
Correct.
Who worked with the pavers at your home?
Our pavers are not the same pavers that they found there that were shown in the photographs.
Okay.
We have peach-colored pavers. Those pavers were white. Those were 12 by 12. Ours are 16 by 16 and 14 by whatever. Our pavers are like a peach color.
So it's your understanding.
We've never had white pavers at our home.
So it's your understanding that the location that Mr. Casey went to on multiple times did in fact turn out to be the area where Kaylee was ultimately found?
My understanding, I don't know exactly where Mr. Casey went in relation because you can't tell by his pictures with the way it looks now.
But there on that drive, what road did you say it was?
Suburban.
Suburban. But he went to Suburban Road on his visits into the woods, correct?
That's what he says.
Okay. And he did that solely based on his conversation with this psychic.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if the psychic didn't tell him this, someone else would have. True? If the tip didn't come from the psychic, the tip...
I think the Sheriff's Department already established that it was the psychic through her phone records and his phone records, and she's also come to the Sheriff's Department and told them or spoken with them. So my understanding, it is Jeanette, because she's already given her records and Dominic's given his records voluntarily to Sergeant Allen and Nick Savage to verify that indeed it matches the time on the timestamp of the video that Mr. Hoover took.
And where does Jeanette live?
I think Virginia.
Okay. And is it fair to say, if it was not the psychic, that the only other person it could have been would have been someone who had firsthand knowledge of how...
I don't know what to say to that because from my understanding is they've already confirmed that it was her who he spoke to. And he was speaking to her while he was there, so that's already been established. So I could not speculate on anything else.
But if that is not in fact the case...
I have no idea. I would not want to speculate on that, sir.
Okay. Well,
that would be an ongoing
just
investigation.
A hypothetical then...
I don't do hypotheticals, sir. You can ask me a question that I can actually answer
the question
yes
would be,
or no.
if it wasn't the psychic,
Well, he didn't find Kaylee that day, so obviously,
He never found Kaylee.
No, he didn't. And neither the psychic had a premonition prior to her being found. Now, we did work with the psychic before that up until November believed that Kaylee was indeed alive.
Wasn't there a time where... Was it the same psychic or different psychic?
It was the same psychic.
Okay. So the psychic and you were having conversations?
I never spoke to the psychic. In fact, I never knew her last name or anything until after the video came out.
So Dominic was having conversations
Dominic
with the
was
psychic.
having conversations.
And Dominic was giving telling the psychic what was going on in the investigation.
No, Dominic, from my understanding, she would seek him out when she had a vision.
Okay. And the question then is, if it was not the psychic...
There is no question in my mind that it isn't the psychic because of Dominic's phone records, who he was speaking with at the time, and his statements to the Sheriff's Department, and his phone records and her phone records coincide with the video. So there is no speculation. There is nothing in my mind that is not her.
Okay. I understand that, but Dominic was speaking to a lot of people.
I'm not aware of that. His phone records don't show that. His phone records show that he spoke to his daughter and
So you're aware
to
that
her.
You're aware that Mr. Hoover believes that the tip didn't come from the psychic, it came
Mr.
from Lee.
Hoover, Mr. Hoover can believe what he wants, but if you could check Lee's phone records and Dominic, they didn't even speak that day. So Mr. Hoover, it's like Mr. Hoover. I mean, Mr. Hoover wants to make money off of this, like a lot of people. I don't believe anything Mr. Hoover says. Mr. Hoover was videotaping us getting fingerprinted, and we had no idea, in Brad's office. And John Allen found out about it because it was on Mr. Hoover's camera when Sergeant Allen confiscated his camera.